Most down in Worthersley were still groggy with sleep when the murder bell disturbed the peace at dawn that April morn. But Rhiannon had been wide awake for some time already. Not from Grana's snoring, neither, though it had been a night of spectacular blastings, but rather because during the wee hours the wind had switched south, and spring had finally come blustering up high Clodaghcombe bluff. When Rhea could not keep still for another moment, she'd crept from the pallet and tiptoed to the corner of the loft where sparrows had last year built a nest, leaving a wide and breezy gap in the roof twigs where you could look down upon the world. 'Twas still dark, but Rhea had lately discovered she much enjoyed the night look of things. The other 5 cottages atop their bluff shone in the moonlight, the glistening brook sewing them together with starry stitches. They seemed like fairies from the olden days of magic, dancing with joined hands around the small stone church. The church itself looked completely made of moonglow, or elsewise from the honey of Grana's prized hives, which Rhea could just make out hovering ghost-white in the misty distance. She smiled at a lump of shaggy darkness upon the church roof, clearly visible against the bright stone steeple. It was certainly their gross-hawk, Gramp, standing vigilant night watch on behalf of all up here. They 3 women in this cottage, and the invalids they cared for in the other 5. Well, 4 at this moment. They'd a vacancy in their 5th invalid cot. Now the ox-kicked yeoman had died of his dire injuries last month. The moonlight sparked gold off Gramp's ancient, birdy eyes. "Good evening to ye, Gramp," Rhea whispered through the darkness.
"Croak!"
Gramp flapped his hoary old wings, so the mites making their snug bed in his feathers were rudely awakened and went spiraling out into the moonlight like glistening fairy dust.
"Croak!"
At that alarm, Grana gave an impressive last snore and sat straight up.
"Thanks be to ye, God, as I'm still a-breathin',"
she said heartily, her usual practice upon waking. Then, missing some warmth, she felt beside her on the pallet and found only the indents of Rhea's body in the wool-covered straw.
"Rhiannon, where have ye got to?"
Grana called out. Rhea grabbed her skirt from the peg. "I'm a-hurrying to Bluff's edge to gather whatever seed there be, Grana, ere the wind that brought it this gusty night takes it on along elsewheres."
"But it be darkish, Rhea,"
Grana warned predictably.
"You must await the dawn afore it be safe to—"
But Rhea was by then pulling her rough wool skirt over her long flaxen sleep shift as she hopped down the loft ladder. She figured her distance from Grana far enough so she could pretend not to hear. "Be back later, Grana," she sang out as she pulled tight on the waistcord of the skirt and knotted it. She grabbed the rawhide ankle boots that awaited her behind the ladder, finding them nice and toasty from the nearby fire. Usually Mam would have slept beside the fire pit, but just now she nursed poor burned Ona and her twins in their cottage both day and night. So without anyone else to question her, Rhea skittered barefoot and light as a spider across their main room, grabbed her seed bag from the rafter, and hid out quite jauntily into the adventures surely awaiting in the mysterious night world. Upon the stone stoop, she sat long enough to pull on the boots and lace them. It had been Gramp's main business all Rhea's life to heft off and fly above her each time she travelled to the rough lip of the high stone crag. So here he came, swooping from the chapel roof like some cumbrous stone gargoyle come alive.
"Is the wind not wondrous tonight, Gramp?"
Rhea called up to him, bouncing to her feet. He teetered above her, straining to gain his wingy balance upon that same rough night wind she liked so well. Had he words, he might surely have naysayed her opinion, as the bluster of that gale provided him with only troubles. But that's oft the way of it. The human has the go of things, and the beast is left with no choice but the go-along. The gardens and the hives were pinkish as Rhea sailed past them, and by the time she and Gramp were zigzagging through the thicket of wind-bent orchard trees, The fog had mostly loosed its hold and slunk on back down to the sea, fog being a watery thing and completely out of place in the sky. Still, it will oft sneak there in the deep of night, pretending to be its better cousin, the cloud.